The story starts with the main character telling us about Princess Shualina, in who she has been transmigrated. All she wants is to be loved and return to her family. When she meets her father, she says, "I'm real. I'm the child from 18 years ago. Shualina is me." Her father asks for proof. Her spirit powers were almost completely taken, but she still has a little left. She shows her father this power, hoping he would recognize her. However, all her hopes are shattered when her father says she is weak and not his child. The one who took Shualina's power was none other than her half-sister, Azela. Azela not only took her powers, but also her life. Princess Shualina, who everyone called a villainess, was the true princess. Abandoned in an orphanage due to the Empress's schemes, she lived a life of loneliness and had a tragic end. This was the story of Princess Shualina, the story that our heroine read. A girl named Tellin comes and says, "If you're done cleaning, come and hurry up to prepare dinner." Tellin is the director's lackey and loves to bully her. When Tellin trips her but catches her before she falls, Shualina becomes very suspicious because Tellin is never nice to her. She thinks Tellin put something in her pocket, but before she can check, Tellin quickly grabs her hand and drags her to the kitchen. In the kitchen, she searches in her pockets and finds the director's ring. Shualina realizes Tellin's plan was to have her accused of stealing. When Tellin falls down, Shualina quickly goes to see if she is okay and slips the ring back into Tellin's pocket. The director arrives because of the noise and asks what happened. Tellin says that Shualina tripped her, but Shualina protests, saying she was the first to check on her when she fell. Other children gossip, saying that Tellin tripped on her own and is now accusing Shualina. They mention how Tellin always bullies others and lies. Tellin claims she saw something in Shualina's pocket and thinks it's the director's ring. The director then accuses Shualina, saying, "I feed you, I house you, I raise you, and you dare to steal my ring? You've got some nerve, you thief." Shualina takes off her clothes to show that she doesn't have the ring. Tellin continues insisting that she saw Shualina steal it. Some kids speak up, saying Shualina never went to the director's office and only cleaned the first floor, calling Tellin a liar. When Tellin hears this, she says Shualina stole the ring earlier. Our heroine points out that Tellin is the only one who went to the director's office and keeps changing her story. When the director hears this, she searches Tellin and finds the ring in her pocket. Tellin claims it wasn't her, and blames Shualina again. The director says the same thing to Tellin that she said to Shualina, then drags Tellin away. Tellin cries, "No, not today. I'm sorry, director. I'm sorry." Shualina starts thinking about Tellin's words, especially "not today." She realizes Tellin seemed particularly nervous that day, her outfit more elaborate than usual. Not only that, but Tellin started cleaning the orphanage at dawn. Then it hits her. Duke Velo. The Velo family uses a special attribute called chi instead of mana. They were considered a cursed family because people instinctively felt fear just by looking at them. To erase their bad reputation, they had once taken in and temporarily cared for children from the orphanage, and today was the day. This was an opportunity for our main character. For her to survive, it would be better to be under the Duke's patronage. After some time, we see our heroine glad that she secured a spot near the main gate, saying it was worth it to have deliberately taken up the spot to meet the Duke first. Then, she hears someone knocking at the door. She opens it and asks who it is. She sees two men, one older and one younger. Guessing by the older man's black hair and purple eyes, she realizes this man is Duke Velo, and the younger one must be his son. She starts by saying to the younger one, "Older brother, you're pretty. What's your name?" He responds with, "Windy," and she remembers that it's short for Windecked. Windecked is a secondary male lead and future Duke in the original story. He turns into a villain after failing to win Azela's heart. Based on the original timeline, he should be 11 years old. Our heroine isn't affected by the curse because of her spiritual powers, which protect her from it. Then the Duke asks her, "What's your age?" Shualina starts counting on her fingers and says, 6 years old. She then asks him, "What's your name?" The Duke replies, "You should go tell the director. She'll know if you say Vilo." She says, "Yes, let's go." I'll show you the director's office. When they arrive at the director's office, she knocks on the door, saying they have guests. The director thanks Shualina for guiding them and proceeds to present them. When the director hears the name Velo, she is very surprised. Then the Duke, who is undercover, says that Mr. Velo needs a child to stay with him for a month. The director quickly grabs some papers to search for a suitable child, but the Duke drops a bomb, saying there's no need to search because he will take Shualina. The director is shocked by the Duke's words. While holding her, the Duke tells Shualina that she will come with him. They get into the Duke's carriage, and Shualina asks the Duke what work she will do. The Duke tells her that she will be treated with great respect in his household. She will eat delicious food, play, and rest comfortably. He adds that she will even be featured in the newspaper. Someone was about to bump into the Duke's carriage, but the coachman manages to dodge. Due to the sudden movement, the carriage shakes, and Shualina is about to fall, but the Duke catches her. She thanks him for that. When the coachman explains what happened, she wonders, a noble should recognize the Duke's carriage. How could you not apologize when you almost collided with it? What were you thinking? She looks out the window to see who it was and spots her father. When the Duke is about to tell the coachman to follow them, she quickly says she is hungry. The Duke tells the coachman to just go and not follow them. When they arrive at the mansion, the maids welcome her, and a photographer is waiting to take a picture upon their arrival. Shualina, startled by the camera's flash, turns away. The photographer, because of the Duke family's curse, immediately drops to his knees, begging for forgiveness. When Shualina sees this, she says, I was just surprised because it's my first time. And then she strikes a pose, asking for a good shot. After that, the photographer, still trembling, leaves. Then the mansion's butler welcomes them and introduces himself. Since the Duke is still holding her, she asks him to put her down. She then properly introduces herself, and the butler tells her to come to him if she has any problems. She thanks him. Then her personal maid, Lucida, arrives. The Duke asks Shualina to get to know Lucida, because she will help her the most. Lucida brings a cloak and wraps it around Shualina since it's chilly outside. The maid then asks if she is hungry. Shualina replies, yes, and Lucida tells her that she will prepare a meal right away. After she eats, she will have a bath. The maid asks what she would like to eat, but Shualina doesn't know any specific meal. The Duke then says to prepare the best food available. Shualina thinks she shouldn't get used to this kindness because it will only last for a month. Later we see everyone sitting on the couch, and Shualina properly introduces herself this time, thanking them for the invitation. The Duke remarks that the floor is cold and picks her up, holding her. He says, Shueli, please have a good time next month. Shualina corrects him, saying her name is Shualina, not Shueli. The Duke responds, I thought you wanted me to call you that. Hearing this, Shualina thinks to herself, I'm such a fool. The Duke's second son then asks her what her nickname is. Windy, the first son, tells him to introduce himself first. The second son introduces himself as Delon. Our heroine compliments his name, saying it's pretty, which makes Delon happy. He asks her again what her nickname is, and she replies that she doesn't have one. The Duke then suggests Shushu as a nickname. Shushu thinks it's cute and feels that the Duke finds her cute as well, making her very happy. Windy then announces that the food preparation is done, and he and Delon argue over who will carry Shushu to the dining room. Windy claims that Delon isn't strong enough to carry her, but adds that he would allow Delon to carry her if he can do 1,000 consecutive diagonal cuts. Delon promises to work harder, saying he won't hurt Shushu. In the dining room, the maid Lucida comments on how Windy, Delon, and Shushu look like close siblings. When Shushu hears this, she thinks how nice it would be if it were true. She imagines having a family that would protect her, a loving father and brothers, and a prosperous life. She could have lived comfortably, without any threats, unlike now where she faces life-threatening dangers as a princess. Then the food arrives, and everyone begins to eat. The Duke points to a plate and says to Shushu, "These are cream puffs." Shushu tries one and remarks that the taste is overwhelming. She thanks everyone for the food and starts to try other dishes, but suddenly she begins to feel nauseous. She quickly grabs a bucket and vomits everything she ate. She wakes up in bed with everyone gathered around her. They ask if she is okay. The doctor explains that her nausea was caused by consuming excessive nutrients all at once, plus eating the cream puff. He prescribes that she should only eat light foods and take some medication. Dylan then tells her that she had been asleep for 2 days, and everyone had been worried about her. Noticing that everyone is standing far away, Shushu guesses it's because she feels filthy. She quickly tries to get out of bed to avoid dirtying it, but Windy stops her, telling her to get out of bed slowly and take a bath. The Duke orders Lucida to prepare the bath for Shushu. After the bath, Lucida asks Shushu if she feels a bit better. Shushu says her head hurts a little. Lucida then tells her that the Duke said her opinions are very important, that she's a good girl who observes her surroundings and ensures her own well-being. Hearing this, our heroine starts to think about the fact that she believed the Duke was angry earlier because of his dark expression, but now she realizes he noticed her being nervous and was concerned for her. Lucida tells Shushu that the Duke family has a remarkable presence, and because of this presence, everyone is afraid of them. The Duke is also worried that Shushu might have been hurt because he stayed close to her. When Shualina hears this, she feels the need to run and clear up any misunderstandings. But then Lucida says it's time for her to change into her new clothes. When Shualina sees all the clothes laid out, she feels very happy. Lucida explains that the Duke prepared these clothes for her. Shualina picks a dress, and Lucida helps her change. While doing so, the maid mentions that, for now, they only have ready-made clothes, but the Duke has already arranged for a tailor to take her measurements and make custom clothes. Shualina starts to think about how much care the Duke is putting into her, paying attention to even the smallest details. He asks her for her opinions, and is always kind to her. She doesn't want him to be hurt because of any misunderstandings, so she runs to the Duke, asking him to listen to her. She starts speaking. "I hate that Brother Windy is avoiding me. He kept avoiding my eyes earlier, and it hurt my feelings. I like his grace, I like Brother Windy, I like Brother Dylan, I like Lucida as well, and I like this home and everyone here. Coming from the orphanage, everything feels like a paradise. At the orphanage, no one cared about me, no one loved me. I was a useless child. But for the first time in my life, I met good people, people who care about me, who hug me, and hold my hand. I'm so happy." As she says all this, Shualina realizes that she and the Duke's family are very similar. Just like Shualina, who was alone in the world and rejected by her family, the Duke's family is isolated because of their curse. She continues, "Why do you avoid me? It makes me feel sad that you're avoiding me." The Duke lifts her up and hugs her. She adds, "Please don't avoid me anymore and don't hate me." The Duke, while holding her, says, "It's only been a short time since you woke up. You must be exhausted. Go inside. I'll feed you some soup." Shualina changes into a dress and asks the Duke if she looks cute. The Duke replies that she is as cute as a dragonfly's wings. She then shows him something on her dress and lifts it a little. When the Duke sees her legs, he notices how skinny she is. He suggests they eat before the soup gets cold and tries to feed her. Since the soup is too hot, she spits it out. The maid comes over and asks what happened, and the Duke explains that Shualina is still in pain and spilled the soup. The maid asks if Shualina is okay, to which Shualina responds that the Duke gave her the soup without cooling it down first because it was too hot. The maid gently scolds the Duke, telling him that he should blow on the soup before feeding it to Shualina. She then gives Shualina a cup of cold water and instructs her to hold it in her mouth for a while. The Duke remarks that Shualina's body is weak, so her tongue must be delicate too. The maid points out that eating such hot food without cooling it would hurt anyone. The Duke mentions that Windy and Dylan didn't have this problem, but Shualina reassures him, saying he didn't give her the soup on purpose. She asks why he actually gave it to her. The Duke responds that it's because she is very thin, and to grow taller, she needs to eat well. He promises that if she eats well, takes her medications, and gets healthy, he will give her something very special. Afterward, Shualina's father is seen returning to his palace. He has been searching for Shualina for the past 6 years. His other wife, Elena, had told him that Shualina's mother died after giving birth to Shualina, and that Shualina had also died at birth. Everyone finds it strange that he is still searching for a child presumed dead, but he knows she isn't dead because he felt her spirit powers when she was born. He has a daughter named Azela, with Empress Elena, and he feels sorry for Azela because he didn't want to marry Elena, or have a child with her. He couldn't love her. People have been telling him to stop searching for Shualina and focus on raising the living children, but he would never give up on finding her. He is determined to find her. Meanwhile, back at the Duke's mansion, the Duke is in his office when someone comes to inform him that the investigation into the orphanage has been completed. When the Duke first saw Shualina's condition, he started an investigation into the orphanage from where she came. The investigator proceeds to report that the children were starved and did not receive proper nutrition, like Shualina. The children weren't dressed appropriately for the season, and the entire orphanage was cold, except for the director's office. The Duke remarks that, given the state of the orphanage, the director must have embezzled money. He comments that, if the funds had been used properly, things wouldn't have gotten so bad. He then orders for Shualina to be brought to his office. When Shualina arrives, the Duke asks her to sit down and questions her about the orphanage. Shualina notices a cold expression on the Duke's face and starts to worry that she has done something wrong. She fears the Duke plans to send her back to the orphanage because he doesn't need her anymore. She hesitates, then asks, "Perhaps you plan to send me back to the orphanage because you don't need me anymore. Should I go back?" The Duke, startled, quickly says, Wait, Shualina, what are you saying?" At this point, Shualina corrects him, saying, "It's Shushu." The Duke continues, "Yes, Shushu. Who said you weren't needed? Who said anything about you not being needed?" Shualina, still worried, responds, "But you suddenly asked about the orphanage." The Duke apologizes, admitting that he was too hasty in his approach. He explains that the doctor said she's completely healed, and then presents her with the promised gift. Shualina looks at it and sees that it's like a cream puff, but the Duke explains that it's not an ordinary cream puff. It's an ice cream puff. She takes a bite and exclaims that it's delicious. The Duke then tells her that he was asking about the orphanage because he received a report about the director. Shualina sees this as an opportunity to reveal the bad things the director did, but she starts off cautiously, saying, "The director is a good person. She works hard so that everyone can eat. Some people donate money to us, but such people are rare, so we have to help the director a lot." The Duke, concerned, asks, "You children have to do things?" Shualina replies, "Of course. We also work very well. We do sewing, laundry, and cleaning. After breakfast, we clean up and sew until dinner. We work about 10 hours a day. We work hard to make things, and the director sells them to buy food." When the Duke hears this, he becomes furious and declares, "The director is a terrible human being. They must punish and expel the director and bring in a new one." Shualina is overjoyed at the thought of the children finally being free from the abusive director. A few days later, Shualina and Dellen go out to visit a park. While there, Dellen goes to buy a drink for Shualina, leaving her alone with the maid, Lucida. However, the maid takes her eyes off Shualina for just a second, and Shualina is kidnapped using a magical circle by the Empress's minion. The orphanage director is also involved in this scheme. They have come to take Shualina's spiritual powers once again, just as they did a month ago. They use a tool called the Brilliant, which contains Shualina's stolen spiritual powers. Azela, despite being of royal blood, has no spiritual powers, so she always carries the Brilliant to compensate. In the original novel, it was said that Shualina had stolen Azela's spiritual powers, but in reality, it was the opposite. Shualina's only thought is that the Brilliant must not touch her. When the Empress's minion tries to extract her powers, Shualina resists, screaming for the Duke's help. In her struggle, she accidentally strikes the Empress's minion's belt, causing some potions to fall to the ground and shatter. At that moment, the Duke appears and shouts for them to take their hands off Shualina. The minion attempts to create a magical circle, but Shualina picks up a shard of the potion bottle and stabs the minion in the leg. The Duke seizes this opportunity to strike the minion with his sword, taking him down. Shualina tries to destroy the Brilliant, but before she can, Windy arrives and quickly pulls her away. She shouts that they need to get rid of the Brilliant. As the minion attempts to teleport away with the brilliant, the Duke stabs his hand, destroying the object. Without the brilliant, the Empress won't be able to come after Shualina for a long time, as it takes time to create a new one. Afterward, the Duke takes Shualina with him while his soldiers deal with the orphanage director. The director, in her final moments, cries out to Shualina, "But I asked for help too, and you turned away." Shualina, without remorse, turns her head away, mirroring the director's words. The Duke brings Shualina back to the mansion, where she asks Dellen if he is okay. Dellen, worried, asks if she is hurt. Shualina reassures him that she is fine, but Dellen says he feels unworthy of being Shushu's big brother because he couldn't protect her, all because he went to get a drink. Shualina comforts him by saying, "The evil magician took me away, but I knew you and the Duke would come to rescue me." She then reflects on how dangerous this thought is for an orphan who isn't supposed to trust anyone, yet she felt like everyone would come to save her. She realizes that this time she barely escaped, thanks to the Duke, but the Empress will come back for her spiritual powers again. Today was manageable because of the Duke, but what if the Empress decides to sink the Velo family along with her? The Duke's family is at the top of the empire, but the Empress, being royalty, holds tremendous power. Additionally, the Empress's family, the Bertildes, controls fertile lands in the southern part of the empire, thus controlling the empire's food supply. In contrast, the Duke's family has remained uninvolved in politics, so their influence is limited. Shualina worries that not only the Bertilde family, but possibly the entire faction of nobility, could become her enemies. She is placed on her bed as they realize she has developed a fever. The Duke orders a doctor, but Shualina, feeling dizzy, asks for some water. Suddenly, water falls onto her head from nowhere. She then says she feels cold and wishes for warmth, and a fire instantly appears. Overwhelmed, she collapses. After some time, she wakes up. Everyone is by her side, and they ask if she feels better. Shualina says yes, and then she asks about the orphanage director. The Duke informs her that the director received her punishment and tells her about the bad things the director did. The Duke then tells her, "I know how you may feel now, but I want you to meet someone." A mage from the tower appears and introduces himself. He came because of Shualina's special ability. He grabs the Duke's hand, and the Duke reassures Shualina not to worry, saying, "I'm right beside you." The mage asks Shualina how they tormented her, and she begins explaining how bad it was and how much they hurt her, doing it repeatedly. The mage tells her that he's there to help, and that if they can figure out what her powers are, they can ensure that the situation never happens again. Shualina already knows what her powers are, but she's worried. What if the Duke finds out about her powers and sends her back to the royal family? Even if she returns, no one in the royal family would welcome her. She doesn't want to go back. The Duke notices that she is nervous and tells her that he already knows a lot. Shualina assumes that he heard things from the director, so she decides to trust him. She places her hand on the mage's hand so he can assess her powers. After a moment, the mage announces that what she has isn't magic, but a special power. Windy quickly steps in and suggests it could be spiritual powers. Dellen points out that spiritual powers are only something possessed by the royal family's descendants. The Duke then speculates that the only possible explanation is that Shualina is the child of the late Empress, who was said to have died shortly after birth but is, in fact, alive. The Duke pays the mage for his services and warns him not to leak any of the information he has learned. After the mage leaves, the Duke asks Shualina if she wants to go back to the royal family and become a princess again. Shualina immediately says no, and the Duke asks why. She explains that if she had been a princess before going to the orphanage, someone could have protected her. But no one did. She grabs the Duke's arm and says, "I'm still an orphan from the orphanage, Duke. You don't need me anymore." The Duke responds, "Yes, an orphan for publicity is not needed. Instead, I need a daughter. Do you want to be my daughter, whom I will protect until the end?" After that, the Duke takes out a necklace from his shirt and tells her that it's a treasure passed down to the girls in their family. The necklace has been kept safe for over 100 years. As the last girl born into the family was over a century ago, He tells Shualina that if she accepts becoming his daughter, he will take a photo with her and place it inside the necklace. He also adds that even if she doesn't accept, he will still protect her. The choice is entirely hers. Shualina thinks she should say yes to such an important offer, but she hesitates. She fears that her presence would put the Duke's family in danger. A few days pass after that conversation. Since that day, her spiritual powers have fully manifested, and her health has improved greatly. She is sitting on a couch, holding the necklace, thinking about the Duke's words when Wendy and Dylan come to sit next to her. Wendy asks if she's thinking about whether or not to become part of the family. He reassures her that he isn't pressuring her. Dylan, on the other hand, says that he's curious and tells her, "Come live with us, Shushu." Wendy scolds Dylan, saying he shouldn't have said that. Shualina tells them that she still wants to live with them, but she's worried that her presence could harm the Grand Duchy's reputation. Wendy assures her, "You wouldn't. Do you want to come out with me?" Wendy takes Shualina back to the orphanage to see what has changed. They leave her at the gate while they wait in the carriage. Inside, she meets 3 girls. All 3 girls thank her. Shualina asks what they meant by that, and the girls explain how she changed the orphanage. People told them that Shualina got rid of the wicked director, and now they have a kind new director. They add that she's so kind and smart that even the Duke recognized it. She thinks that because I got rid of the director, they believe the Duke adopted me. She asks about Tellin. The girls tell her that Tellin was locked in a closet and became seriously ill. Her condition worsened. The director sent her to another orphanage far away. When Shualina hears this, she thinks about Tellin. Even though they didn't have a good relationship, she hopes Tellin ended up somewhere better, where she won't be beaten anymore. After that, she leaves. Shualina asks Wendy why he brought her back to the orphanage. Wendy tells her, "I wanted you to not worry about reputation or background. You are someone who shines wherever you." After they return home, the Duke takes Shualina to the 3rd floor, where the family's history is kept. He shows her portraits of the Velo family members and mentions that they don't have many children, so there's plenty of space for new portraits. He then points to the portrait of the Velo family founder, explaining that the founder was a dragon, which is why their eyes are so elongated. The Duke adds that Shualina probably doesn't know what a dragon looks like, so he promises to show her some pictures later. He then takes her to another room where a tiara is displayed. Shualina comments on how small it is, and the Duke explains that it's meant for a young dragon. He asks her if she would like to try it on, mentioning that it hasn't been taken out in over 100 years. Shualina is worried and asks, "What if it gets damaged?" The Duke replies, "Then we'll just make another one. If that happens, you'll get to choose a design that suits you best." He says this while placing the tiara on her head. The Duke then says, "Although the Grand Duchy is a vassal state of the Avnesia Empire, I'm still the head of a country. If you become my daughter, you'll become a princess too." Noticing the confusion on Shualina's face, the Duke clarifies, "I'm asking you to become my daughter." Shualina, feeling overwhelmed, asks, "What if I accept all of this, then later refuse to be adopted?" The Duke calmly replies, "If you're worried about that, then become my real daughter." She realizes that the Duke doesn't know her full situation, but if he did, and if he still accepted her, she would be incredibly happy. She decides to tell him the truth about her situation, saying, "If you adopt me, it might put you in danger." The Duke asks, "Are you talking about the Empress?" Shualina nods. The Duke then asks her how she knows the Empress is targeting her, and Shualina explains that she overheard them when they tried to steal her spiritual powers. She continues, "I only just realized that I have these powers because I'm a princess. Actually, Azella doesn't have any spiritual powers. She's been deceiving everyone." The Duke responds, "So that's why they tried to steal it from you." Shualina continues, "They'll keep coming to take it. The Grand Duchy might be in danger because of me. The Empress might see you as an enemy too." The Duke firmly replies, "The Grand Duchy is not so weak that we can't protect one daughter." Shualina, still worried, says, "But what if the Empress's power is greater than expected? We were safe this time. But what if they attack you next time? What if they take my brothers next time? The Duke reassures her. Velo is also hiding its strength. Shualina persists. There will be nothing but danger, trouble, and hardship. Do you really want to adopt me, knowing everything? The Duke asks her, is it true that you don't want to return to your biological family? Shualina answers, I hate the idea. They are not my family. The Duke then asks, have you ever met your biological family? She replies, no, I haven't. I don't think I'm really a princess. If I truly am a princess, then why did I have to live like this? He was an emperor, a crown prince, and he couldn't even protect a young child like me. Instead of protecting me, he only loved Azella. I don't have a family. I am alone. The Duke gently says, then I and my children will become your new family. No one will be able to harm you. Come live with us. Shualina, while crying, says, it's just too selfish, but I want to live happily together. I know I'm enjoying a lot right now. I'll definitely repay you somehow, so I want you to become my father. The Duke, hugging her tightly, says, Shushu, parents don't make their children owe them anything. The Duke thinks about how she has many emotional scars and wonders when they will heal. Shualina asks if they will love her unconditionally. The brothers, who have been eavesdropping at the door, rush in and hug her, saying, don't ask obvious questions. Of course we will. Finally, our heroine receives the love and the family she has always wanted.